What's going on, guys, and welcome back. So we have a giveaway to do before we get into your ultimate tier list, where we have 36 decks to talk about. If you want to see this, if you're in on the giveaway, feel free to stick around. If you want to watch the video, feel free to stick around, or if you just want to see my final tier list, skip to the end of the video. All of it's fine with me. Something for everybody here. But make sure you at least drop a like if you're going to skip to the end of the video. Maybe even a comment for the algorithm, and that is it. So we had 47 people comment. Replies to comments do not give you additional entries. I tried to go through and look and make sure. I know there was a couple of multiple commenters, and multiple comments do not get you multiple entries. So just to clarify all that up, we had 47 commenters in on the video, and what did we have to do? We had to hit 1,000 views and 50 likes. We doubled the likes and we doubled the views in a week. Not too bad. We actually doubled it in a couple days. I just wanted to give other viewers a chance to get in on the giveaway, so I wanted to wait a week. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and shuffle the numbers up so it's not just 1 through 47. And they're going to give it a spin, and then we will count from the top down. And that is a commenter that we will go. How far are we going to have to go? Almost to the bottom. We almost lucked out with 5. So number 31. So this is how we go. Chags is 1, John 2, 3, 4, Lee 5, Anthony 6, 8 and 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, Summer 12. Summer has a couple on here, so we're not going to count the others. 13, 14, 15, 16 for random. 17, 18, 19, 20. Isaac 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. Lors 26. 27 for Mitchell, 28, 29, 30, and, well, all you had to do is comment, right? Congratulations. Actually, I'll type out and ask for their Discord and all that good stuff later. Without further ado, though, let's go ahead and get on into that tier list. So we're going to jump on in. We have our top tier competitors. These are decks that I expect to compete for the best of the best. These are the decks that are realistically going to be tier 1 threats. Tier 2 threats, these are decks that aren't quite going to get to tier 1, but maybe they're better than Rogue. And then we're going to have Rogue divided into a couple categories. We have the real strong Rogue choices, because realistically, the right event, the right day, a little luck, a great pilot, lots of things can contribute to a Rogue deck doing well. And then lastly, well, not lastly, we have more Rogue options. Them are just lesser Rogue decks, going to be harder to do well with. And lastly, we got a few fun decks that I don't really expect to do a whole lot, but you never know. On the right day, anything can happen. So, just pulling up my little quick wiki notes here, just to make sure I get all of them back right exactly where we want them. The first deck we are going to talk about, we're going to start it out quick. We have an aggro deck, Amethyst, Emerald, Hyper Aggro. Where do I think this deck ends up? It's definitely a Rogue deck. For me, it's very difficult to put a dedicated like Hyper Aggro deck in like tier 1, tier 2. The deck needs to do incredible things for me to put it up into tier 1, and I don't know if I really would ever do that, but tier 2 maybe in the right circumstances. I like this deck a lot and have played it in a couple formats. However, I'm going to put it down in the more Rogue options. I think that there's just so many good aggro options now, but at the end of the day, it gets countered kind of hard by Steel, and Steel's pretty prevalent, so I don't know how good this deck is going to end up being. So I'm going to leave it in the more Rogue options for right now. Then we're going to go on. We have Emerald Amber Pirates. One of a few pirate decks that, well, now we got some interesting cards. Captain Hook giving you a little draw option. Obviously your Piglet. We got some aggressive strategies. I think this is in the fun deck. I think there's viable pirate strategies. I just don't think that this color combination is the one to take if that's what you're going for. We saw it just top the DLC Seattle Amber Steel Aggro. I said this deck was a deck to look out for. I said this deck was one of the best aggro decks right before that event, and sure enough, it ended up making top 64. So where would I put it here? Well, I'm going to put it ahead of Amethyst Emerald, but I'm still going to put it in the more Rogue options. like I said, I'm very stingy on putting aggro decks up high, and that's coming from someone who loves playing aggro decks. I'm realistic about it. Again, not to say you can't do well, especially the right venue. You expect like a lot of popsicle, you expect a lot of slow decks. Absolutely, deck can just walk people. And even in a less than ideal setting, you might just like hit your cards, you might just hit your draws every time and have a real lucky day, or you just pilot insanely out of your mind or in your mind and you're just a great pilot. Like there's things that can contribute to that, to help you out. But overall, I think most aggro decks, fair warning, are going to be in my rogue category, whether they go strong rogue or more rogue. And realistically, the difference between strong and more is so minimal. Okay, I'm just trying to jump around because this like sorted them kind of awkwardly together. We got another one that we're going to talk about just briefly. Amber steel locations. I think locations are actually going to be decently viable. I think there's a couple ways that you can play them good. I'm going to put this in the strong rogue choices. Again, we saw it kind of pop up and do really well. One of them did in Seattle, and they're getting some new cards. They're getting some good support, and I think that it's still a deck you should look out for. Ruby got a little bit more of the good location support, so do keep an eye out for that deck. See if I can grab it here. Where do we put them? I think that Ruby, Amber Ruby locations, I think is a little bit better, and I think this deck actually has potential to push into tier 2. Will it be high tier 2? I doubt it, but I could see Amber Ruby locations being back of tier 2 and Amber Steel locations being a strong rogue option. What about Ruby Steel locations? I don't quite know about that. I think that the other two just kind of pair up together and have better synergy, but maybe Ruby Steel locations, I'd put it down in that more rogue if we were going to list it in here. Same with Amethyst Ruby locations. You could have like the Pulled from the Sea, your Queen's Castle, stuff like that. But I could see them being more kind of just teched into Ruby Amethyst and less actually a dedicated location deck. We're going to go on now to Blurple. This is a deck that I have liked for a few formats and said that it's a tier 2 deck. And I still think that. I think it's a mid-tier 2 deck. I think that it's a difficult deck to play. It's a very difficult deck to play well. And for those two reasons, I don't think it sees much representation. But for those players who really want to get good and be pushed as a player with a deck, I think Blurple is a incredibly fun deck for that. It's a very good deck for that. And I think it's a rewarding deck if you put the time into it, and you can absolutely do really, really well and just overwhelm your opponents between the ramp and the draw, and they can't do a whole lot. Like, having played against the deck and played with the deck, like, this is a deck that someone like you look at and you're just like, I don't quite get the win condition, but you get there and all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's the win condition, and your opponent just does not see it coming before it's too late. Brooms. Where do I want to put Brooms? I don't think that they really got any better, so I'm actually going to put them in the fun decks. I think out of all the decks in the more rogue and fun, this might have the most representation, and because of that, it may go up into rogue. But I think overall, it's a fun deck. I don't really see it going much higher than that personally, and it's just kind of unfortunate. Ruby Fasa. I've always been critical of these Mufasa decks. I still am. I think that it's a strong rogue deck. It's usually been at like the back of tier 2 for the last 2.5 formats. I think it dips a little bit here. I don't think it improved as much as some other decks did, and for that reason, I'm going to drop it that little bit and put it in strong rogue, and maybe it can prove me wrong once again and creep up into that back end of tier 2. But for right now, this is where it's going to go. And in that same vein, I don't have a lot to say about this deck either. Green Fasa. It topped twice in one weekend this past format, and it's like, is this deck actually going to be a thing? And then it disappeared just as fast. For me, it's a fun deck. I don't think Green Fasa is a deck that's truly that viable. Again, not saying it can't win an event, it can't do good at your locals. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that in the grand scheme of things, I don't see this being a truly competitive deck. I don't see this being a deck that you could take to a DLC and do very well with. Ruby Steel Pirates. Where do we want to put the Ruby Steel Pirates? I really like a lot of the pirate support. I like what they have going for them. Emerald actually got a lot of the good pirate cards. I am going to put this deck in Strong Rogue, however. I think that just it got those couple cards that push it a little bit better, and that being like pulled from the sea and being able to search these locations and get to the ones you need. The new location that deals damage when characters are here too. Being able to move characters to locations with like Voyage and cards like that. Like I think there's a lot here. And this deck also kind of ties into that Ruby Steel locations, pirates. It kind of goes hand in hand. So that's why we don't have the Ruby Steel location type deck. I'm going to put it in Strong Rogue, though. I think that there's a lot of potential here, and people are going to experiment with it, and we'll know after about a month if it's something people really want to stick with. Then we have Green Steel Aggro. Where do I put it? You get bodyguards. You got... This one's weird for me because we're going to not really talk about, but there's Green Steel Pirates, which is also pretty aggressive. I'm going to put this deck here. I think it's in the more rogues. I don't know that this is really even going to be a deck because I just think it's better if you include kind of the pirate package, and it's going to see more play that way. I don't see this version of this deck being really much to worry about. Then, like I said, the pirate version of it, I did do a video on this deck, a template, just to kind of check it out, see how it's going. I think this is a case to be a very, very strong rogue deck, and possibly one of, if not the best rogue deck. Between the Daisy, the new Donald, like there's a lot of good aggressive Emerald pirate cards that we just got. And then you have like your Captain Hook, your Smee. There's lots of captains in here, the John Silver cards. Like this deck, I think, has a lot of potential to be the best pirate deck. And how aggressive will players get with it, or will they go more mid-range? That I'm not quite sure yet, but I think that Green Steel Pirates played as a aggressive to mid-game kind of deck is going to actually be a very scary rogue deck, and you should read the cards at the bare minimum to know what they do, from Captain Hook being a draw engine to, I believe, Daisy. This Daisy actually gets you a draw 2, I believe, based on is it like a pirate character location questing. You have the Donald the turn before where he quests for 3 if you have a captain on board, and obviously your Captain Hook, your Daisy, all these other captain cards pair up really well with your Smee, and then you have all the locations piling in on top of it, and then your John Silver who's benefiting from your locations, and it becomes very, very difficult for your opponent to deal with. And you also got the new Emerald item that can move a character to a location for free at the start of your turn, so it just helps you get characters into your locations to truly take advantage of it. This is a deck I'm really excited for. I'm probably going to play to a degree. Emerald Ruby actions, evasive, anti-meta, whatever we want to call it. I'm going to put in the more rogue. Another deck that I've always been critical of. This is one that has continually topped in small portions, been a really solid rogue deck, and I think that's just going to continue. I think it's still going to be in that rogue strategy. It's usually a very budget version. Obviously, if you're playing Diablos, it's probably not that budget, but usually it's a deck that can be played pretty budget friendly, and I think that is pretty appealing to a lot of players. Green Jafar. Where do I put this deck? I don't expect it to do a whole lot. I'm going to put it in near the bottom of Rogue. I'd probably play pretty much all these aggro decks before I would touch Green Jafar. I've never been a big fan of this version. I think that it suffers from a lot of the same things as Jafar's New World, the Steel Amethyst version of Jafar. I just think that it has less plus sides going for it, and maybe I'm wrong on that. Let me know down below. I am going to, however, put Jafar's Whole New World up here in the Strong Rogue. This is a deck that's very fun to play. It just can get a little bit linear, and if your opponent disrupts it, you have to know how to play the deck well to win with your alternate win conditions. It has them, and you can absolutely do it. You just have to know how to navigate it when your initial play line, your whole new world, Jafar combo gets interrupted, because it's going to get interrupted. Pete, Ursula, things like that. It's going to get interrupted. So you just got to learn how to pivot and play other options in there. Where do we want to go next? Let's go ahead, and I'm going to grab Popsicle here. So Ruby Sapphire, I think this is not just a top deck. I think this is the top deck. I think that this is going to be the best deck. I really, really like Blue Steel this format as well. And I like Steel Song a lot as well, too. I think Blue Steel's of like the top 10 decks possibly from last format. I think Blue Steel improved the most, and I almost wanted to put Blue Steel as my best deck of this format, but with Blue Steel and Steel Song both being top 3 arguably, I think that means Popsicle's probably number 1, because I do believe it's favored into both of those matchups. I know it's favored into Steel Song, and I think the Blue Steel matchup is pretty close to 50-50. Some people are going to argue with me on that. I've seen people say that Popsicle just dog walks it. I don't think that's true, but I do think it is favored over both Blue Steel and Steel Song. So we're going to go ahead and just get both of them up here. There's not a whole lot else to say about Steel Song and Blue Steel. They're both just very strong decks. Blue Steel, though, you get like the Azurite C. You got a couple new cards. Steel Song, I don't think really gets a whole lot of new support that's worth it. But at the same time, and that's not saying they don't have any new cards, by the way. Just I don't think that they improved that much as a deck. But if we go into an aggressive format, this deck is going to be better because of the format you're in. I think this deck just toolboxes so well into the meta. And if Blue Steel and Popsicle are both super dominant, you do have options to go into those item heavy decks with like the can't even think of the name right now, the 4-cost singable song from Encanto. I think that it's Steel Song's gonna be my number 3 deck. These are my top 3 in order. So we go from 0 top tiers to 3. These 3, I expect all 3 of them to be tier 1s. I don't think any of them are going to drop below. For reference, anything that usually tops above 10% total is what I consider tier 1. I expect all 3 of these decks to be up there. I won't be surprised at all if Blue Steel's the best deck of the format. I just think with Blue Steel and Steel Song being there, that it just naturally means Popsicle's going to be a little bit better. And if Popsicle's a little bit better, guess what else gets a boost? Our favorite deck, Green Steel Discard. It's going to be another one of those top tier decks. It's going to be an interesting little rotation we have here, because it's like Popsicle, Steel Song, Green Steel Discard. It's like rock, paper, scissors, right? So where's the format at? Where's the cycle at? I think Blue Steel's going to add an interesting little ripple here because it checks the Green Steel Discard a little bit. So it makes it kind of interesting. And these 4 decks, I think, are truly going to just compete and try to determine who's going to be the best deck. And I think all 4 of them could be the best deck on any given day. It's just going to really come down to pilots, RNG, card draws, top decks, who makes the mistake, who makes the mental error, things like that. All 4 of these decks, if you want to pick up a deck and do well with it this format, these are your best 4 options, bar none. I really, really think that. Working on getting updated lists for them, by the way. If you follow me on Dreamborn and you click my name on any deck, I do have my updated Popsicle deck on there. Video will be coming at some point. We did a bunch of other like tier 2 rogue decks too. So feel free to check all that out. We got another day though, so we're going to get another deck for you guys. And speaking on that one deck that I did cover, and I'm super excited for this deck, has been very fun to proxy and playtest, and I think this deck is a huge sleeper. And it's another fun discard deck. It is blue-green discard. Being able to potentially dump your opponent's hand on turn 4 with Bend to My Will because of Iago and the ramp is just insane. It feels absolutely unfair. And you don't have to hit that. You don't, like, that's not plan A. That's best case scenario. It's not necessarily plan A just due to consistency reasons. But overall, the deck has toolbox to deal with your board. It has toolbox to deal with your hand. It has toolbox to just suffocate your resources and win the game outright. I think it's a very fun deck for me, not for you. And it's a deck that you should really watch out for. Like I said, Green Steel Pirates is a deck I plan to play this format. Blue Green Discard's a deck I plan to play this format, among a couple others. I think it's time. Amber Amethyst Hyper Aggro, the only Hyper Aggro deck that I'm going to put up above Rogue, and I think that this might be the best Tier 2 deck. Like, it's so close to me pushing it into competing for Tier 1. I truly believe an aggro deck can't be Tier 1 because you're relying on your matchups, your RNG, to hit your right cards and just not lose to yourself. Like, there's too many variables where hyper aggro, you can play lights out, you can play flawlessly, and sometimes you just go 2 and 3 because of your matchups, and there's nothing you can do about it. Sometimes you go 5 and 0 for the same reason. Sometimes you go 4 and 1 even though you play poorly. But sometimes you're just gonna, especially in like a DLC, a major event, you're just gonna lose games because of your matchup. And for that reason, I have a really, really hard time putting aggro decks into that top tier. However, I think that this deck is scary and absolutely good enough to put into that that tier 2 status. Sapphire Amber, like the hero aggro deck, you know, your Anna's one of the cards that benefits from this. Where do I want to put hero aggro? I'm going to go into more rogue options, and I think I'm going to put it above Amethyst Emerald. Trying to rank these like in order almost too. I think that that's where I'd put it, behind Amber Steel aggro. Would I go behind Amber Steel? I think that I would. I would borderline put this actually up. Do I put it up there? I don't know. I'd like to. You know what? We're gonna move Amber Steel. Like, I really like a lot of things Amber Steel has going for it. I mean, heck, you can even hit the Kita shift line using your Bodyguard Kita from Steel with your 5-cost Kita, and just lowering and essentially getting a free turn of questing. Again, not saying that it's ideal or perfect, and don't walk yourself into a Sisu. Please don't walk yourself into a Sisu. But I really like the interactions that these two decks have with each other and what they can offer each other. Lemon Lime Song discard. I'm going to put them right behind Amber Amethyst. I'm actually going to put them behind Blue Green too. I think Green Steel's the best discard deck we have, but I think Blue Green is actually going to be better than Yellow Green discard. People are going to disagree with me on that. I get it. I think that I think Sapphire just improved a ton. Sapphire, I think, had the best support in the new set, and for that reason, I think that Sapphire Emerald discard leapfrogs the Lemon Lime discard deck. Again, maybe I'm wrong on that, but that's one of my hot takes. Is this deck I truly expect to make some noise this format, and we will see what happens with that. Amber Steel Pirates. Where do we put them? I'm going to go above Hero Pirate or Hero Aggro. I think. Do I? Yeah, I do. There's, like I said, there's so little that separates more from strong rogue. So even like within this category here, every deck here could arguably be interchangeable. It's truly hard to say where they should go. Like, I feel like every deck that ends up in top tier, like, you're not gonna be able to argue it. Like, those are the top decks, and then there's a bit of a drop off before tier 2, and then the tier 2, there's a noticeable drop off before the total rogue here. The drop off between strong and more rogue, very minimal. The drop off between cards or decks in these categories, almost negligible. You might not even notice it. It's gonna be so little. Ruby Songs. Amber Ruby Songs. Don't confuse this with well, what I was going to say isn't even going to make sense there. So let's not even go there. I'm going to put that as a strong rogue. I'm going to put it, yeah, I'm going to put it above pirates, but behind aggro. I think that it's a very strong deck. I think that each set, it's waiting for like one, maybe two more cards, and then it's truly going to like catapult up high. Hopefully we get that before like we hit a set rotation or something. But for right now, I think that Amber Ruby Songs is just, it's a strong rogue choice. Lemon Lime, so Amber Emerald Hyper Aggro. I like Amethyst Emerald more. No, I don't. Those Amber bodyguards are so nice between Baloo and Donald. Almost said Daisy. Picture was getting me. They just push aggro decks so much, and there's no bodyguards here. You got the bounce package, but that's not the same. I'm going to leave heroes above them, though. I'm going to leave hero aggro above it. While we're talking, we just kind of mentioned Amethyst Emerald. Amethyst Emerald discard. I had someone say they wanted to see what I could do with this deck. I think that this deck actually has some potential. Where's that potential land? Well, out of the 4 discard decks, I think it is by far the worst one. But I'm going to put it in the strong rogue. This is too high because of representation. It'll be lucky to be down here. But I think I'm going to use how good the deck truly is and push it a little bit higher. What was it? Set 3, this deck was borderline tier 1. It wasn't played very much, but power-wise, it was borderline tier 1. I think right now, I think it's a really strong rogue deck, and it's not going to see play, though, is the problem. I don't expect hardly anyone, if anyone, other than myself, to even try to play the deck. I think you have some real nice interactions with, like, bosses on a roll to try to dig for your Iago or your Bend to My Will to get that turn 5 hand dump, and then you just control everything by that point. You also could Ursula double sing friends on the other side to draw 4 cards to get to what you need. Otherwise, double sing bosses on a roll, so then you look 5 deep. If none of them are Iago or Bend or whatever you need, you put all 5 to the bottom of your deck, re-sing it, 5 more, and you get to look 10 cards deep into your deck to get to the cards that you need to combo off. And I think it's a really good deck. I think it's one that'll, again, push you as a player. And I don't think the representation is going to be there. I don't think enough people are going to play this deck. But I think that Amethyst Emerald discard is actually a pretty good deck that you should keep an eye out for this format. And I'm going to put it in my strong rogue category. Quantum did a video on this deck, and where would I put it? Simba aggro. Another aggro deck. Who would have thought? I'm going to put it above hero aggro. The new Simba card is crazy, and so many people in my Amber Amethyst video were like, play Simba, trust me, play Simba, trust me, you have to play Simba. I get it. In the video, I know I post a list on Facebook, and so many people were like, Simba, 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 and had they clicked the video and watch it, I talk about Simba, and I said I want to test Simba and put it in there. Honestly, I don't know that he makes the cut in Amber Amethyst. I'm not saying other Amber decks don't play him. I think that, well, I guess I should rephrase that. I guarantee you every Amber aggro deck is going to play it to a certain degree when we track our deck cores, though. I don't think it's going to be a unanimous card. I don't think it's going to be a card in all the tops. I don't think it's going to be truly part of the deck core. It might be played in 50% of the list, 70% of the list, but I'd be surprised to see it played in more than 70% of topping lists. I really, really would. I think that it's strong, but it's a 5-cost uninkable card. You have lots of uninkable cards already in this deck. That's one of the big issues with it. And the payoff is great. I get it, especially because you can shift over your bodyguard Simba. I just don't think that is as impactful because you already have so many bodyguards and options. and you should be trying to win the game by that point too. And maybe I'm wrong on this. This might be one of my hot takes, that I think that Simba's overrated. I truly do. What comes to mind? Jafar combos. Like when Jafar Illusionist was announced, it was going to be tier 1. It was going to be absolutely broken. Beast Relentless OTK, going to be absolutely broken. Going to just destroy everything. What others? Like, those are just the two that immediately jump out to mind, where they were supposed to be so good, and they weren't. Not saying either one's a bad deck. I think Jafar's Whole New World is actually a really strong deck. Beast OTK, I actually didn't even put it in the tier list. Like, that's where it pretty much ranks. It costs way too much for what it is. It'd be in my more rogue category, and it's like a $700 deck. Like, it's hard to justify it. But yeah, I got this feeling that Simba's going to be that card of the set that just kind of flops hard and doesn't perform up to the expectations that other people expect it to. Tempo. Where do we put Tempo? They were solid as a tier 1 deck, and until they prove that they're no longer there, I think I'm going to leave them in that top tier. They got the new item that allows you to get the lore when your characters get bounce on your opponent's turn. I think that the deck is insanely consistent. Again, it's getting interaction on your opponent's turn. Lyle Tiberius also, when your character get banished. Like, there's just a few effects that are starting to add up that go off on your opponent's turn. Goat, Rabbit, if your opponent removes them, stuff like that. So that's one of the really good benefits of this deck. There's not many decks that truly benefit on your opponent's turn. This is one of them that has quite a few cards for that. So I think Tempo is improving. Is it improving enough, though? And it's one where, are its bad matchups improving more? I'm up in the air on Tempo. I think out of all the decks that will finish in this top tier competitors, I think Tempo is the one most likely to regress down to tier 2. But I still think that, at least until it does do that, that it's a tier 1 threat, and it should be respected as such. Almost done. We have 7 more decks to go. Wheel Fossa. So we already talked Ruby Fossa, Wheel Fossa, Steel Fossa. Where would I put this deck? I'm gonna go right behind Jafar's New World. I don't know how much better the deck got. The new Gantu, like, Gantu's an incredible card to hit off your Mufasa. It applies a ton of pressure. It quests for 4. I think that the new Ralph is another incredible card to hit off your Mufasa. So it did get some new options, and I think that's really, really good for it. I'm curious to see if these new options are enough to push players into playing it, and I don't know that it is, but I think that Wheel Fossa it's a good deck, and it's going to be in that strong rogue category. I kind of mentioned the 10% mark for tier 1. Tier 2 is kind of like 2 to 9.9%. Rogue is under 2%. Technically, fun decks would go into that rogue category too. It's just tier 1, 2 rogue. Just kind of the way I generalize it to talk about it. 7 Dwarves. I don't think that they really got any better. I don't think they got any worse, but I'm gonna put them in that fun category. That's pretty much all I got to say about that. Our second Ruby Steel deck. Ruby Steel actions using Sharpshooter and some of the songs and just action cards from the 2. I think it's a rogue option. It's in my more rogue. I don't like Sharpshooter. I really don't. I'm not a fan of this deck. I'm very critical of it. I think if Sharpshooter was inkable, I would like the deck a lot more. But so many of the good cards in this color combination are already uninkable that if you're going to play Ruby Steel, I think you're far better off playing only the best cards, Ruby Steel OTB, and I'm going to put this near the top of Rogue. I think that Ruby Steel OTB, as I call it. Again, only the best. You play only the best cards, your beasts, your B preps, your whole new worlds. You load up on all these power cards, and this deck is actually crazy. I'm working on updating my version for the new format too. This deck could absolutely be mid-tier 2 if people would pick it up and try it. But because of, once again, because of representation, because why does representation matter? Well, you see, it's hard to get to that 2 to that 10% mark if people don't play the deck. You got to play the deck to get results. You got to have results to prove that you're a good deck. Otherwise, it's all hearsay. If I just say, no, this deck is tier 1 because I said so. Right? People like results. We like to see it happen. We like to see the proof. The proof is in the pudding, and I actually do like my pudding. So, we got 3 more decks to go. I've seen a lot of hype around this deck. Amethyst Steel Hyper Aggro. Where do we put Amethyst Steel Hyper Aggro? I think Amber Amethyst is still far better. And personally, I would still put the Emerald Steel Pirate version above it too. I'll put it above Jafar's New World though. We'll put it there in the Strong Rogue category. I can't put it any higher. In good faith, I can't. I think that putting it near the top of Rogue is more than fair. And that's where we're going to leave it. So 2 decks left. Another one, lo and behold, actually I'll probably end up playing both. So what decks am I going to end up trying to play this format? Blue-green discard. Well, Amber Amethyst, always do. Although I let my kid play that one. So do we pick up Tempo? It's been 3 formats since I played Tempo. Maybe we try Tempo out again. Ruby Steel, only the best. That's a deck that I absolutely plan on playing. Green Steel Pirates is a deck I would like to play. So what? That's 5 different decks right now. Maybe Amethyst Emerald discard instead of Tempo. Maybe we'd mess around with that, like I said. So like 6 decks. This will be 7 and 8. Well, we got 3 months to play 8 decks. Probably 2 to figure out what we want to take to set championships. Interesting. Repeat. Amethyst Steel. Where's Amethyst Steel going to end up? I'm actually going to put this... Calhoun is so good. And Gantu is strong. And Wreck-It Ralph is strong. I think it's right in that top of tier 2. I'm going to put it behind Amber Amethyst, though. I'm going to put it at, like I said, it's right near the top of tier 2. I don't see it becoming a tier 1 deck this format. However, it's a very strong deck. It has a lot of consistency, a lot of toolbox because of steel. I think it's in a good spot. It can thrive in an aggro format. It can thrive in a control format. You can even tilt this deck into an aggro deck if you want. So I think that repeat Amethyst Steel, more mid-game control-y, less aggro is a very, very strong deck. And again, you can tech in some aggro cards. You're probably already playing the Smees, so that is that. Lastly, one deck to rule them all. The deck that has been around pretty much forever. The deck that, well, it's just not going to go anywhere. It's, talk about toolbox. Talk about consistency. This deck defines both of them. It might not fit into that triangle box format we were talking about because it's just good everywhere. Is it overwhelmingly great? No. Does it have a favorable matchup versus every top deck? No. But does it have a bad matchup? Not really, no. It is so strong, so consistent that arguably it just sits up here above them all. But is it better than them? I don't think that it is either. So we're actually going to put it behind those 4 as a top tier deck. It's better than Tempo. I think that Blue Steel is going to jump into tier 1 and Tempo is going to fall down to tier 2. I think, like I said, these decks, maybe Location stays strong Rogue, but if we put Tempo down here, like this is my true expectations. Top 5 decks, tier 2 decks, all of our Rogue decks, some fun decks. But I think Tempo, until proven otherwise, until it falls off, I think I'm going to leave it in that top tier competitor because Every other tier 2 deck here, I don't see any of them becoming tier 1. Tempo maybe stays up there. So for that reason, I'm going to leave it up there for now. But I do expect Tempo to drop down to very, very strong tier 2. Probably in that like topping at like 8% range, somewhere in that like 8 to mid 8s, which is below 10. So that'd be tier 2. What decks did I miss? What decks would you like to know my thoughts? Comment down below. Did you actually watch the whole video? Thanks. Appreciate it. But yeah, overall, this is my tier list. This is what's expected. Let me know down below what you think. What's right? What's wrong? What's too high? What am I undervaluing? What decks did I not talk about? What decks do you want to know more about? All that stuff. Comment down below. I will try to respond to all of them. I'm not going to guarantee it, but I will try. And congratulations to our winner once again for our giveaway. Thank you guys for watching. Like, share, subscribe, comment down below.